So if you were here last week, the talk was on skeleton woman, the myth of skeleton woman, and the theme being embracing this living, dying world. And tonight we're going to be continuing that exploration in a way, and I wanted to hearken back to my very first retreat because I remember probably day 2 or 3. The teacher of that retreat said that the boundary to what you can accept is the boundary to your freedom. The boundary to what you can accept is the boundary to your freedom. And I could feel in the room, and I could feel in myself some intuitive, yeah, that's truth. Just kind of getting it that if we're battling reality in any way, if we're battling aging or sickness or dying or other people's behaviors or our inner weather or other people's, not cooperating with us, if we're at war with how it is, it's exhausting and it's futile, basically. So we get that. We get the spiritual significance of this notion of really accepting the life that's right here. And I'm going to use, as I speak, interchangeably the words accepting or forgiving or allowing or even a surrendering presence to what is right here. So Ajahn Chah puts it this way. He says, if you let go a little, you get a little peace. If you let go a lot, you find a lot of peace. If you let go absolutely, you find absolute peace and tranquility. Okay. So again, something resonates. We kind of know if we let go and stop the fight, there's some very beautiful peace that is possible. And we can also sense in daily life how incredibly challenging that is. And again, when things don't go our way, we contract and react. We don't open and let go. Again, Ajahn Chah, very good, this Thai teacher, he passed away probably 20 years ago now, but so he says it. He says, we see ourselves clinging and we know it, but we still can't let go. This is 50 to 70% of the practice. Isn't that good that we see it? This is part of the practice. We just see it. Okay, I'm hooked in some way. I'm clinging or I'm resisting. Same thing. Okay, we see it. And so 50 to 70% of the practice is seeing it, knowing it, but still not being able to let go. But that's okay. I think that's really encouraging. At that same first retreat where I heard, the boundary to what you can accept is the boundary to your freedom. It was followed up with a little story about a guy who's chased by a tiger and he kind of goes over the edge of a precipice and he's hanging by the limb. There's always a limb there that you're hanging by. And there's a tiger above, and below him, thousands of feet below, there's these jagged rocks. And so he yells out, help. He's really freaked out. Is anybody there? And he hears a booming voice. Yes. He goes, God, is that you? Yes. Help, can you help me? And then God says, just let go. Is anybody else there? So letting go, and I actually think letting be is a better language for it, is our least favorite option, if it's such a thing as an option. But it's not just that. Even though intuitively most of us would say, yeah, accepting is very basic on the spiritual path, when we get into nits and grits, there's a lot in our belief system that says, wait a minute, there's a lot of places where it's really not right to accept. And I want to speak to that, because it feels really important. It sounds obvious, but do we accept it when somebody's physically attacking us? Okay? So let's just look. Here's a reflection for you. Okay, you can close your eyes. Okay? So this reflection really begins with bringing to mind some inner experience about yourself that you typically don't like, that you judge yourself for. In other words, when your anger flares up, or your experience of yourself as lazy, or when you feel selfish, self-centered, judgmental, when you go into obsessive thoughts or feelings of jealousy or addictive craving, just pick something that when it comes up, you don't like, something you judge yourself for. This is just to kind of experiment a little bit with what we're talking about. And just imagine when it arises and sense it arising right now, what it's like for you, the kind of thoughts and feelings that go along with whether you've chosen addictive craving or neediness or insecurity, whatever, just what it's like when you're in it. So we get the instructions to let be, to simply be mindful of it, to let it be. And sense for yourself what is wrong with accepting this moment, that it's here, that this selfishness is here, this anger or laziness is here. What's wrong with accepting it? What bad might happen if you just let be? What really stops you from accepting, okay, this is here, right now? So you're really examining what really is in the way or prevents you from accepting some inner weather systems that you encounter. And you can keep exploring this, open your eyes as you're ready. And so some of you might have noticed that when you kind of checked it out really and said, okay, what's so bad about accepting, is some very quick reflex that if I accept this right now, it'll never change. There's no way I'll be able to get over it, improve myself. How many of you kind of touch something in that genre? If I accept this, it won't change. How many of you found that the sense of if I accept it, it might get worse and get out of control? Can I see by hands? You're shy, you're going like this. Okay. There's a real sense that acceptance is going to get in the way of improving ourselves. That if we let be, if we don't figure out how to get rid of things or change things, not only will we never improve ourselves, but others might reject us for them. For some people, there's a sense of if you really sense, well, what would happen if you really started just saying yes and letting be all the different weather systems you normally judge? It's like we wouldn't know who we were anymore. If we really stopped judging ourselves. I mean, try that on. There's a Zen teacher that says that our freedom is to be without anxiety about imperfection. So what if one of these weather systems that we think of as our imperfections, what if you just really, rather than trying to change it, there wasn't that anxiety, there was just a letting be around it. But we have a broader objection. It's not just that we don't want to let go of our judgments of ourselves. There's a sense of, what about accepting it when somebody else is acting in a hurtful way to ourselves or loved ones? Do I just accept that? What about accepting, even broader, companies that are clear-cutting forests, or accepting the pollution that is being put into our rivers and streams, or the cruelty to millions and millions of animals every day? What about accepting that? What about accepting the oppression of minorities, the violence, the racial violence that we've all just witnessed as an enlarged community in the last couple of years, the hate murders? Do we accept that? So I bring this up because we have linked with the idea of acceptance actually a sense of, well, that's being passive or inactive, or it's actually resignation. It's not ethical or moral. So the reason I bring all this up is because it's really important as we go deeper into spiritual practice, if we want to understand the truly liberating potential of radical acceptance, that we really understand what it is and what it is not. For ourselves and also for sharing with with others. So perhaps one way to consider it is, if we ask ourselves, well, what does it really mean? What does letting be mean, especially if a situation's harmful, if we're acting out an addiction, or if our partner's been deceptive, unfaithful, or a child's being really rude? What does it mean then? Okay? And so one principle that I think is really helpful to remember is that you can only accept, and I'll use also the words let be or say yes, you can only accept your own experience in the present moment. Now what that means is that, let's say, we are finding ourselves acting out an addiction. All we're accepting is this moment's feeling of shame or craving. If we're accepting somebody else has been deceptive or unfaithful, all we're really accepting is this moment's feeling of rage or fear or hurt. In other words, acceptance is just this moment, what we're actually experiencing. It's the actuality or reality that's here. That's what we have to accept, and that's all we can accept. Does that make sense? An extension of that. Acceptance or allowing or letting be does not mean that we're approving of something, and it doesn't mean that we're validating a related belief. So let's say again that we're have an addictive craving and acting out on addiction, and acceptance means, okay, I'm feeling the shame right now of that. But it doesn't mean that we're believing we're bad. That belief might be there, but acceptance doesn't mean we're validating the content of the belief. So acceptance has nothing to do with the content of beliefs. We're just accepting a living experience in the moment. Okay? It's another piece. Another piece is that acceptance, this moment, does not mean in any form inactivity or disengagement. In fact, acceptance and allowing and letting be is an incredibly engaged kind of presence. We're fully in contact with what's going on. Our attention's fully engaged, which then enables us to engage actively in the next moment. Another principle about acceptance and allowing is you can't will acceptance or allowing. The ego can't make it happen. There can just be an intention. We're going to get into that a little more in a bit. But it's not another doing. Okay, now I'm going to go and accept this. It's more of a undoing. I'm going to undo the resistance by relaxing back and making room. The final thing, the final principle that just, again, these are principles for you to try on, not to accept as content. Just check them out and see what feels like living truth. The final piece is that mindful acceptance or allowing in this moment of what's right here is the very ground of responding to the next moment with wisdom. So, we get the email that's very provocative, and most of us can get it, that if we can pause enough to just get in touch with the moment and be with this moment's experience, there's more of a possibility from that pause that will then respond from a place of a little more equanimity. So we get that, right? That makes sense. It's true in the biggest ways. It's as Carl Rogers said, it wasn't until I accepted myself just as I was, right here now, that I was actually free to change. That our capacity to open and say yes to and allow the what Clarissa Estes says is the not beautiful, is actually the prerequisite to freedom and to unfolding. It's also, in a very basic way, brings out our best. It aligns us with, it gives us the chance of coming back to our heart and our values. There was a article that some of you might have seen in the New York Times on July 5th called The Morality of Meditation. Can I see by hands? I'm just curious how many saw that one. Yeah, good number. Okay. Really interesting piece of research. There was one group did an 8-week course in meditation. The other group didn't. They called people into a lab ostensibly to do a certain kind of questionnaire or something. But the real research was that when the person that was part of the experiment came to the lab, there was one free seat. They took that seat, but then the other people that were in the seats were part of the experiment, but they didn't know it. Then somebody with crutches came in. And the question was, who will give up their seat? Will this person give up their seat? So what they found is that for the group that had been meditating, they were 3 times more likely to give their seat up than the others. The statistics were a little discouraging. Let me see. It says only 16% of the non-meditators gave up their seats. 16%. Proportion rose to 50% among those that had meditated. So, how come? Well, there's different theories, but the basics are, A, if you're practicing meditation, you start noticing more. So you actually kind of register, oh, okay, this is what's going on. You're just more alert. But the other piece is that as we cultivate mindfulness, it actually activates the compassion network in the brain. There's more empathy, more access to empathy. So all that is to say that this basic principle of pause, when we're activated, pause, and see if it's possible to open to and let be what's going on inside us in the moment, is the very ground of living our lives aligned with who we really are, aligned with our heart and our deepest awareness. Now again, we can frame it this way, and I find that most people kind of get it, that if we can pause, we're going to come from a wiser place. And then what we need to look at is, it's still amazingly difficult. Like we're going against the stream of some of our strongest conditioning, that when things are difficult, everything in us wants to act. Emotion is designed to move us. So as soon as things are uncomfortable, which there are a lot of moments of our lives, and when they get really uncomfortable, the hardest thing in the world is to pause. One of the best little examples I ran into is a story of a couple of New Jersey hunters in the woods, and one of them falls to the ground, and he doesn't seem to be breathing. His eyes are rolled back in his head, and so the other whips out his cell phone and calls emergency services, and he gasps to the operator, my friend's dead, what can I do? So the operator has a very calm, soothing voice, and she says, okay, let's take it easy, let's slow it down, I think I can help. First, let's make sure he's dead. So there's a silence, and a shot is heard. The guy comes back on the line, he says, okay, now what? Isn't that one of the worst jokes you've ever heard? This was actually voted one of the world's funniest jokes. I thought it was... Okay. But we get the gist of it, is that we'd rather do something than nothing. It's the beginning of soothing our nervous system to feel like we're in control. That's why we keep doing things. We're doing self. So pausing, the reason it's so radical, this letting be, not in some way trying to control or manipulate our experience, really pulls the ground out from under the ego. Our entire egoic structure is designed to react. Non-reacting starts to undo that sense of ourselves. So, and it's not just the ego. It's not just the human ego in terms of reacting. I mean, you can look at a simple-celled creature or see an enemy and know that if you poke that little creature, it's going to go contracting right away, right? So this contracting isn't just a phenomena on the egoic level. But you can see it really clearly with us that when something difficult happens, if we lose something or somebody clearly is misunderstanding us or we're informed our child was just suspended from school, we don't just take a breath and stop and say, okay, what's happening? Can I open to this? We just don't, usually. Okay? So, and it's down to the basic understanding in both Western psychology and Buddhist psychology that as soon as there's unpleasantness, we have a complete reflex to in some way control it by pushing it away. As soon as there's pleasantness, on some level we're trying to keep it, hold on to it. And for most of us, we do it with our thinking. As it's unpleasant, we immediately launch into judgments and figure out how to get rid of. Pleasant, there's some swirling around on how we can have more and not lose it and so on. It's the deepest sense of who we are. This self who's navigating through the day, trying to avoid the discomforts, trying to make things work out, trying to be in charge. And if you watch your day, and it's really interesting to kind of look back through the day. I sometimes call it the spacesuit self because it's like we take on this spacesuit of strategies to navigate, and it's pretty much always in action through the day. Now I'll do this, now I'll do that, this will make this feel better, this will work out that problem. And if we're not doing, we're figuring out. You know, have you noticed how many moments you're figuring things out? They're not all necessary moments. But a lot of it goes on without even any conscious intending, this reflex of reacting. Okay, so our question tonight then is how do we in the midst of this tendency for reactivity, how do we find that presence that allows us to pause and open to our experience in the moment? And clearly, if there's some emergency that's asking for fight, flight, that's going to serve us, we have access to that. But most of the things we're reacting to are not in that category. Most of them are habitual fears and wants that we're wired to react to, that keep us circling in the same behaviors that we know cause us trouble. So the primary place that we're going to look at now on how we come into that presence is a movement from thoughts into the direct bodily experience. This is the key movement. This is the training that meditation actually gives us some skill in that is so key. And the inquiry that will help us do that, this is a question I ask myself a lot and I think you'll find useful, you can pick your version of it, is that when you're feeling reactive, just to say, well, what right now is asking for acceptance inside me, or inclusion? Or alternately, what am I running from right now? What am I resisting? What's difficult to be with? Some inquiry like this, what wants acceptance, or what am I running from, will help you to begin to let be the part of you that most needs attention. Okay? Give you an example from my own life last Wednesday. So, last Wednesday, I intended to be here in person. I couldn't be, so we chose this talk on Skeleton Woman. And late morning, the way this unfolded, I'd had this talk I'm giving right now, prepared pretty much. But I started feeling sicker and sicker. I was feeling achy and weak and tired and so on. So I canceled a midday appointment. I thought maybe I'd turn a corner, but I just kept getting worse and worse. And so when I check into my body, okay, am I supposed to go teach tonight? My body was entirely thumbs down, but my mind wasn't cooperating. My mind was at odds. Well, maybe it won't be so bad, or, I really can't cancel. It was way too late to find a guest teacher. And the sense of letting people down and just not showing didn't feel good. So I'd keep checking with my body, uncomplicated, thumbs down. But then all of a sudden, I felt this tension. And then as it happens, it dawned on me that it might be a good idea for me to walk my talk a little bit, because here I was writing about embracing, I was going to teach about, letting be the moment, embracing situations that are right here, and here I was all at odds. So I really said, okay, so the boundary to what I can accept is the boundary to my freedom. What is it that I need to accept? That inquiry. What is wanting acceptance? Needing acceptance. So, okay, beginning, first thing I'd find were those unpleasant sensations of sickness. Okay, I can do that. It's not that hard to accept, okay, unpleasant. But there was more. There was this voice that was saying, yeah, but not showing up feels like failure in some way. It's letting people down, it feels disconnecting, it feels like something's wrong with me more than just I'm sick. Okay, so what wants acceptance went deeper to allowing the sense of fear and deficiency and that falling short feeling. Now, of course, that's really, really familiar territory. I mean, I can say there have been tens of thousands of moments that I've gone, oh, okay, that's what I need to be with. So when I can get to it, it doesn't take that long. It's almost a relief. It says, oh, okay, it's that thing, So then just breathe with that feeling, be with it. And the kind of space opened up so that there was a shift in my sense of who I was. I went from feeling like the person who was sick and actually something was wrong with her because she was going to let down others to just this kind of space of awareness that was noticing and including these different feelings and sensations. This is the freedom that's possible. And whenever there's conflict, whenever there's suffering, there's always something inside us that's asking for acceptance. There's always something that wants to be included in a kind and open attention to help bring us back to a sense of wholeness.